The missed flight. Orion Prime Spaceport was alive with sound and motion. Shuttles lifted off like shooting stars while holographic signs shimmered above countless gates. The air smelled of ozone, metal, and 1,000 alien perfumes. Everywhere, lights blinked and languages overlapped, making it a living maze of sound. Among the crowd, a human named Ethan Cole ran with a small travel case bouncing at his side. His heart pounded as he glanced at his wristcom. It flashed a red alert. Final boarding, Gate 47. He had only 3 minutes left before the Galactic Flight X-92 left without him. That flight was his ticket home after 5 long years working on remote colonies. He missed Earth, the blue sky, the smell of rain, his mother's cooking. Everything about home pulled at his chest, and he promised himself he would never miss this chance. He weaved between towering aliens with glittering skin, stepped around floating drones, and jumped over a luggage droid. The terminal stretched endlessly, and the glowing letters Gate 47 felt like they were miles away. He whispered to himself, come on, almost there. He reached the last security gate, out of breath but grinning. That was when he saw her. An old alien woman, fragile and thin, stood just beside the walkway. Her skin shimmered faintly silver, like moonlight trapped in crystal. She struggled to lift a large glowing crate that hummed with energy. Every few seconds the crate slipped from her hands, and she nearly fell. Travelers walked past without even a glance. Some looked annoyed, others looked away. No one cared. Ethan slowed down for a moment, torn between two thoughts. The flight was leaving, his last chance home. And yet, something deep inside told him to stop. He sighed heavily, closed his eyes, and muttered, I can always catch another flight. Then he turned back. Hey, ma'am, he called, jogging toward her, need a hand. The alien woman looked up in surprise, her silver eyes glowing softly. Her voice was gentle but weary. You shouldn't trouble yourself, human. I am fine. Ethan smiled kindly. It's no trouble at all. He crouched, grabbed the heavy crate with both hands, and lifted it easily. The weight nearly pulled his arms out, but he managed to steady it on her hover cart. Wow, he said between breaths. What's in this thing? A black hole. The alien woman chuckled weakly. Something like that. Ethan laughed, wiping sweat from his brow. There, all set. The woman nodded gratefully. You are kind, young human. He shrugged, just doing what anyone should. But when he looked up, the boarding gate light flashed red. The mechanical voice echoed. Gate 47, closed, all passengers aboard. His smile faded. He had missed his flight. For a moment, silence surrounded him, the crowd fading into background noise. He stared at the closed gate, feeling that sharp sting of regret. All those years of waiting to go home, all lost because of a single moment. But then the old alien's soft voice broke the silence. You shouldn't have done that, she said quietly. But, thank you. Ethan forced a small grin. Guess I wasn't meant to leave today. The alien tilted her head. Fate is a strange thing, she murmured. It chooses for us. He nodded, though he didn't really understand. A few minutes later, they sat together near the terminal cafe. The woman's name, she told him, was Soraya. Her accent was melodic, her words precise, as if every syllable carried hidden meaning. Ethan noticed faint glowing marks running along her hands, symbols that shimmered and disappeared when he blinked. Curiosity burned inside him, but he didn't ask. Instead, they talked about small things. About Earth's oceans, which she had never seen. About the stars, which she said sang when one listened long enough. Her eyes sparkled when she spoke of ancient places and forgotten times. Ethan felt like he was listening to living history. After a while, she looked at him closely. You humans, she said softly. You rush, you run, yet you still stop for others. He smiled. Well, I guess that's just how we're built. Her lips curved slightly, but her expression grew distant. I once knew another who said that. She whispered, almost to herself. Before Ethan could ask who, a sharp sound cut through the air, a deep, metallic hum. He turned to look, and his heart skipped. Across the terminal, 3 armored figures had entered. Tall, silent, faces hidden behind glowing helmets. They moved like hunters, scanning the crowd with crimson lenses. Soraya's calm face suddenly changed. Fear flashed across her silver eyes. Her hands trembled, and her voice became a whisper. They're not supposed to find me. Ethan's mind raced. Who are they? He asked. Her answer was barely audible. Those who do not forgive. The hunter's eyes fixed on them. One of them spoke through a translator, voice cold as iron. Soraya of Vetharian, you are ordered to surrender. Ethan looked at her, stunned. They know you. She stood slowly, her frail body straightening, her voice firm. Stay behind me, Ethan. He started to protest, but she raised a hand, and the air shimmered faintly. What are you doing? He whispered. Protecting you, she said. The hunters moved closer, weapons glowing blue. Passengers screamed and scattered. Ethan's instincts screamed to run, but something held him there. The old woman who had seemed so weak now stood like a force of nature. Light began to glow from her skin, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Her silver eyes burned brighter. Then she whispered a single word, one Ethan couldn't understand, and the world twisted around them. The terminal blurred, sound vanished. Colors melted into light, and Ethan felt his stomach drop. When the world returned, they were somewhere else. A dark, empty cargo bay, air filled with dust and silence. Ethan stumbled, grabbing a crate to steady himself. What just happened? Soraya exhaled shakily. We are safe for now. Ethan's voice trembled. You teleported us? She nodded faintly. I had to. He stared at her, disbelief mixing with awe. This was no ordinary traveler, no helpless old woman. Something about her power, her fear, her name, Soraya of Vetharian. It all hinted at something much larger. Ethan looked at her again, breathing hard. Who are you really? He asked quietly. She looked back, sadness flickering in her eyes. Someone, she said softly, you were never meant to meet. And with those words, the adventure truly began. The hidden truth. The air inside the cargo bay was cold and still. Flickering lights buzzed weakly above rows of abandoned crates. Ethan stood frozen, trying to catch his breath. His heart still raced from whatever Soraya had just done. It didn't feel real. One moment he was in a crowded terminal. The next he was standing in the shadows of a forgotten loading dock. Soraya leaned against a crate, breathing heavily, her hands trembling slightly. The glow that had surrounded her earlier had faded, leaving only faint silver traces along her skin. Ethan took a cautious step toward her. You need help, he said softly. She shook her head. No, I need rest and silence. Her voice carried an odd strength even when she was weak, like someone who had seen too many wars. Ethan looked around, trying to understand where they were. The metal walls bore the logo of Orion Freight Division, probably an unused section of the spaceport. Dust floated in beams of light, and the faint hum of engines echoed far away. He touched one of the walls, still warm from nearby ships. You moved us across the station? He asked. Soraya nodded slightly. A small jump, risky, but faster than running. Ethan shook his head in disbelief. You call that small? You just broke physics. A faint smile touched her lips. Physics bends for those who know its true name. Ethan frowned, confused by her words, but said nothing. He could see that she was tired, but also alert. Her eyes kept shifting toward the entrance, as if expecting someone. Finally, he asked, who were those people? Her silence stretched too long. Then she said quietly, they are hunters, shadows of the Council of Vetharian. Ethan raised an eyebrow. And they're hunting you? Yes, she whispered. For what I carry. She lifted her hand, and Ethan saw a small silver pendant glowing faintly in her palm. It looked like a crystal shard wrapped in light, humming softly with power. What is that? He asked. Soraya looked at him, her voice almost sad. A key, human, to more than you could imagine. He sighed, rubbing his forehead. Great, so I helped a queen, a fugitive, and now possibly the keeper of some cosmic key. Her expression didn't change. You joke to hide your fear, she said, a trait I find human. Ethan smiled weakly. Yeah, that's how we stay sane. Outside, a low rumble shook the floor. Both turned toward the door. Faint mechanical sounds echoed down the corridor. Soraya's eyes widened. They found us, she whispered. Ethan's pulse jumped. Already? How? They can trace energy residue from the jump, she said quickly. We must move. She tried to stand, but her legs gave out, and Ethan caught her before she fell. Hey, easy, he said, You're not going anywhere like this. Her hand gripped his wrist tightly. If they capture me, you will die too. Then I guess I'll just have to make sure that doesn't happen, he said firmly. She stared at him for a moment, studying the human who had given up his flight, his comfort, his safety. Then she whispered something under her breath, words ancient and melodic. A faint shimmer surrounded Ethan's wrist. A glowing mark appeared there like a tattoo of light. He looked at it in surprise. What did you just do? I gave you a shield, she said, a fragment of my protection. He glanced at it again. A magic tattoo, huh? Magic, she said with a faint smile, is just science with better manners. The sound outside grew louder, metallic boots striking the floor. Ethan felt his chest tighten. They're coming. He glanced around desperately, spotting a maintenance shaft at the corner of the bay. He helped Soraya up and led her toward it, prying the cover loose. The passage was dark and narrow, but it was the only way. Go, he urged. I'll cover you. She looked at him sharply. You would stay behind for me. Someone has to slow them down, he said, forcing a grin. And I've seen enough action movies to know that's my part. Her eyes softened again. You are a strange human, Ethan Cole. Yeah, he said, I get that a lot. He helped her crawl into the shaft, then turned as the bay door exploded inward. The shockwave threw him to the floor, and 3 armored hunters stormed in, weapons raised. Ethan ducked behind a crate as blue plasma bolts sliced through the air. His pulse thundered in his ears. He grabbed a metal pipe from the floor, the only thing within reach, and waited for one of them to get closer. When the nearest hunter stepped forward, scanning the area, Ethan leaped from cover and swung the pipe with all his strength. The blow knocked the hunter's weapon aside, sending sparks across the floor. The alien turned, growling in an unknown tongue, and slammed Ethan backward. He hit the ground hard, gasping. Before the alien could strike again, a surge of blue light flared from the ceiling. Soraya's pendant shone like a small sun, and a shockwave blasted through the room. The hunters were thrown against the walls, armor cracking. Ethan blinked in disbelief, looking toward the vent where Soraya had been. She was floating slightly above the ground, her eyes glowing white, her voice echoing in strange tones. Energy spiraled around her like a storm of silver light. The hunters scrambled to recover, but one look at her and they froze. Not from fear, but from recognition. One of them whispered something through his helmet, a word that made Ethan's skin crawl. Your Highness. Soraya's light dimmed suddenly, her body swaying with exhaustion. Ethan ran to her side as she fell, catching her before she hit the floor. Her breath came in shallow gasps. I told you, she whispered. You were never meant to meet me. He looked at her, now realizing the truth. She wasn't just some traveler or priestess. She was royalty, someone with power enough to bend space and command fear. But why would an empress be running from her own people? He didn't have time to ask. Outside, alarms began to blare again. The sound of more ships approaching filled the air. Ethan lifted her carefully and whispered, Whatever happens next, I'm not leaving you. Soraya looked up at him, her lips trembling with a faint smile. Then the stars themselves may remember your name. And as the shadows closed in around them, Ethan had no idea that this single choice, to help one old alien, would soon shake the entire galaxy. The escape below. Smoke drifted through the broken cargo bay as alarms wailed in the distance. Red warning lights painted everything in harsh flashes, turning shadows into monsters. Ethan held Soraya close, her weight light, but her presence heavy with power. She looked fragile now, her silver glow fading. Yet even in weakness, she carried the calm of someone ancient. He whispered, We have to move. She nodded faintly. The underlevels, she murmured. Take the old maintenance tunnels, they lead away from the port. Ethan scanned the wall and spotted a half-hidden hatch covered in dust. It looked like it hadn't been opened in years. He kicked it hard until the rusted lock snapped, and a narrow tunnel yawned open. Hot air rushed out, smelling of oil and electricity. He helped Soraya crawl inside first, then followed, pulling the hatch shut behind them. Darkness swallowed them whole, except for the faint light still glowing from Soraya's pendant. It flickered gently, casting silver patterns across the metal walls. They crawled for several minutes, the tunnel tight and winding. Somewhere above, distant thuds echoed, the hunters spreading through the station like predators. Ethan whispered. How did they find us so fast? Soraya's voice was calm, though tired. They are bound to me by oath and technology. Oath and technology? Ethan muttered. That's a creepy mix. She gave a faint smile. The Vetharian do not separate faith from science. The tunnel opened into a small service chamber filled with old pipes and humming panels. Ethan helped her sit on a crate while he checked the door. We should rest for a bit, he said. You're shaking. She looked down at her hands. Faint sparks still ran across her veins like liquid light. My strength is limited, she admitted. Teleportation takes more than energy. It takes life itself. He frowned. You mean it drains you? She nodded slowly. Yes, each jump costs time from my own existence. Ethan stared at her, shocked, then stopped doing it. She met his eyes. If I stop, you die, and the key falls into the hands of those who would burn galaxies. He exhaled deeply, running a hand through his hair. You're really making it hard for me to complain. Suddenly, the floor trembled, a deep metallic vibration rolling through the structure. Soraya tensed. They've brought tracking drones. Ethan cursed under his breath. We can't stay here. He looked around and spotted a ventilation shaft leading down into darkness. Guess we go deeper, he said. Soraya hesitated. The lower levels are dangerous. Yeah, he replied. So is staying here. Without waiting, he pulled the cover off and started climbing down, using old pipes as footholds. Soraya followed, the faint silver light from her pendant illuminating their descent. As they dropped lower, the sounds of the upper world faded. Down here, the air was thicker, filled with mist and machinery hum. They reached a vast underlevel, a maze of forgotten tunnels, dripping pipes, and broken cargo haulers. It looked like a city abandoned long ago, lit only by weak emergency lights. Ethan whistled softly. Remind me to never book a flight through this place again. Soraya smiled faintly. This was once a thriving sector, she said. Before the wars, before silence. He turned to her. Wars? What wars? The silent rebellions, she answered quietly. When knowledge became forbidden and truth became a weapon. Her words sent a chill through him. And you were part of it? Her eyes turned distant. I was not part of it, human. I ended it. Before he could ask more, a faint buzzing filled the air. He turned and saw a red scanning beam sweeping through the corridor. Drones, he hissed, pulling Soraya behind a broken cargo stack. Tiny metallic spheres floated through the air, glowing with hunter-red lights. They scanned the floor, the walls, and then hovered in silence. Soraya whispered, If they see me, they will summon the guard. Ethan gripped a metal rod and glanced around. Then he spotted a loose power cable sparking on the floor. Cover your eyes, he said quickly. Before she could protest, he grabbed the live wire and slammed it into a leaking fuel drum. A blinding flash filled the corridor, followed by a roar of fire. The drones exploded in bursts of light, the sound echoing through the tunnels. Smoke filled the air, and Ethan coughed. That should slow them down. Soraya stared at him, half in shock, half in admiration. You're reckless, she said. He grinned. You're welcome. But their victory was short-lived. From deeper in the tunnel came heavy footsteps, more hunters, their armor gleaming red in the firelight. Ethan grabbed Soraya's arm. We need another way. She pointed toward a glowing crack in the floor, a maintenance lift shaft long abandoned. They ran, the sound of plasma fire chasing them. Ethan jumped first, grabbing a dangling cable. Hold on tight, he shouted as Soraya leapt into his arms. Together they slid down the shaft as bolts of light sizzled above them. The fall felt endless until the shaft widened into another chamber. They landed hard, rolling across the floor. When Ethan stood up, he realized where they had fallen, a forgotten archive vault. Rows of glass-sealed containers glowed softly, filled with strange artifacts. Soraya's eyes widened. This place, it still exists. Ethan looked around. What is this? A museum? She shook her head slowly. No, a grave of knowledge. She walked toward a pedestal and placed her hand on it. Light spread across the walls, and ancient symbols came alive, forming constellations of data. Images of alien worlds, wars, and crowns filled the air like holograms. Ethan turned in awe. What is all this? She looked at him, her face solemn. The memory of what I was. He frowned. You mean, who you were? She nodded slowly. No. Human what? Before he could ask, the pendant on her chest pulsed again. Her silver aura returned for a brief second, illuminating the chamber with pure light. In that glow, Ethan saw an image projected from the pendant. A throne, a fleet of ships, and Soraya standing tall among them, crowned with light. He stepped back, whispering, "You're not just royalty, you're something more." She closed her eyes. "I was a guardian of balance, before greed turned wisdom into war." Her voice trembled as she added, "And now that war is coming back." Ethan looked at her, still catching his breath. "So what happens now?" he asked quietly. She opened her eyes, glowing silver again. "Now, human," she said, "you must choose, run for your life, or walk beside me into legend." Ethan's answer was simple. He lifted his chin, his voice steady. "You helped me miss my flight. I'm already in." And as the vault lights dimmed, the fate of two worlds began to intertwine. The secret of the key. The hidden archive glowed like a ghostly temple in the dark. Ethan stood surrounded by swirling holograms of stars and forgotten empires. The light from Soraya's pendant painted silver rings across the dusty air. For the first time, he felt small, a single human standing before the living memory of an entire galaxy. Soraya walked slowly toward one of the glowing pedestals. Her fingers hovered above its surface, and ancient runes pulsed beneath her touch. The air hummed as images came alive, star systems collapsing, fleets burning. And among them stood her younger self, crowned in light and surrounded by armies that bowed before her. Ethan stared in disbelief. "That's you," he whispered. She nodded, her voice soft. "Long ago." He hesitated. "You were their ruler?" She smiled faintly. "A ruler, yes, but not as you think. I was a keeper, not a queen." Ethan frowned. "A keeper of what?" She turned to face him, her silver eyes glowing brighter. "Of balance," she said simply. The Vetharian Empire once stretched across 7 galaxies, but its power was never meant for conquest. Her expression darkened, until greed took hold, and the council twisted the wisdom of the ancients into weapons. She raised the pendant, the same crystal she had shown him before. "This," she said, "is the last piece of the ancient core, the key of resonance. It connects the consciousness of worlds. It can heal or destroy, depending on the will of its bearer." Ethan stepped closer, his voice low. "And they want it." Soraya nodded. "They want to use it to erase." "Erase what?" he asked. She met his gaze. "Life, human, imperfect, unpredictable, living life." Ethan's throat tightened. "Then we can't let them have it." A faint smile touched her lips. "We?" He shrugged. "You said I was part of this now. Might as well earn the title." Her eyes softened. "You remind me of the first humans I met, long ago." That made him blink. "Wait, you've met humans before?" She nodded. "Your kind was young then, fragile, full of wonder, and yet you burned brighter than most stars." Before Ethan could respond, a faint metallic echo broke through the silence. He turned sharply, scanning the dark corridor beyond the vault. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, armored. Soraya's glow dimmed instantly. "They've found the vault," she whispered. Ethan's pulse quickened. "How do we stop them?" She looked at him with calm resolve. "We don't stop them, we deceive them." Before he could ask what she meant, she pressed her hand to the pedestal and murmured an old word. The holograms around them shimmered and collapsed into dust. The vault darkened until only her pendant glowed faintly. The door slid open with a heavy hiss, and 3 hunters entered, their armor glowing red in the dim light. Their leader's voice echoed. "By order of the council, surrender the key." Ethan stayed silent, crouched behind a fallen column, his grip tight on a broken metal pipe. Soraya stood tall despite her weariness. Her voice was calm, regal even. "Do you know what you serve?" she asked them. The leader hesitated. "We serve the council." She took a step closer, her glow rising. "Then you serve a lie." Before they could react, the light around her flared, bending the air like heat. The hunters fired, but their bolts passed through empty light, a holographic projection. Ethan gasped softly, realizing she had cloaked them both. "Move quietly," she whispered, pulling him toward a narrow passage at the back of the vault. As they slipped through, the hunters' shots echoed against stone, hitting only ghosts. They reached a small lift that looked centuries old. Soraya pressed her pendant to the control panel, and it flickered to life. The platform began to rise slowly through layers of machinery and metal. Ethan looked up at her. That was incredible. She smiled faintly. Illusion is easy, she said. Truth is harder. As they ascended, the floor beneath them groaned. The old lift shuddered violently, sparks raining down from the ceiling. Ethan grabbed the railing. Please tell me this thing doesn't fall apart. Soraya's tone was calm. If it does, we fly. He gave her a sideways look. I can't fly. She smiled. Then hold on tighter. The lift finally stopped inside what looked like an abandoned command hub. Screens flickered weakly, cables hung like vines. This place once controlled an entire sector of the station. Ethan brushed dust from an old console. Think it still works? Soraya closed her eyes and touched the screen. The ancient system flickered alive. Holograms filled the air again, this time showing the current layout of the spaceport. She pointed to a red-marked section near the surface. That's where they control the docking gates. If we can override that, we can escape unnoticed. Ethan nodded. All right, what do I do? She handed him a small crystal shard, glowing faintly blue. Insert this into the core relay when I tell you, she said. But do not break the circuit. He swallowed. Got it. No breaking circuits, no dying. She gave a faint, approving nod. Minutes passed as she worked, whispering commands in a forgotten tongue. The air filled with hums of energy, and the whole hub seemed to come alive again. But suddenly the console screamed a warning. Unauthorized access detected. Ethan froze. That's not good. Soraya's expression darkened. They're inside the network. The screens flickered, and a holographic face appeared, sharp and cold. It was a Vetharian male in royal armor, his voice dripping with venom. So the lost empress still hides in shadows, he sneered. Soraya's eyes narrowed. Tereth, she whispered. The hologram smiled cruelly. The galaxy no longer remembers you, sister. It remembers only me. Ethan's blood ran cold. That's your brother? Yes, she said quietly. The one who turned my empire into a weapon. Tereth's image leaned forward, his voice dark. Surrender the human. Give me the key, and I may let you fade peacefully. Ethan clenched his fists. You talk too much for a hologram. Tereth's smirk vanished, and the feed cut to static. The entire hub shook violently, explosion warnings blaring. Soraya turned to Ethan. He's sending forces here. We must go, now. They ran through the flickering corridors, the sound of distant blasts following them. Ethan looked at her as they reached the exit hatch. You said this key connects worlds, right? She nodded. Yes. He exhaled. Then maybe it's time we use it. She stopped, staring at him in shock. You don't understand what you're asking. Maybe not, he said. But you said humans burn bright. Let's prove it. Soraya's lips curved into a rare, proud smile. Very well, Ethan Cole, she whispered. Let us burn together. And as the walls of the ancient hub trembled, the human and the fallen empress prepared to turn the very power of creation against the darkness chasing them. The power within the key. The ground trembled as explosions rippled through the old command hub. Sparks rained from shattered panels, while warning lights painted everything red. Ethan pulled Soraya through the collapsing corridor, his heart pounding like thunder. She was weakening again, her silver light flickering like a dying flame. Behind them, the distant sound of armored boots echoed closer. The hunters were coming, and this time, they were not alone. They burst into an open hangar filled with wrecked ships and silent drones. The air smelled of burned metal and ozone. Ethan stopped, panting. There's no way out. Soraya looked up at the high ceiling, eyes reflecting the orange glow of fire. There is, she said softly, but it will change everything. From beneath her cloak, she drew the key of resonance. The small crystal shimmered, alive with swirling galaxies inside it. Ethan stared, awed. That thing could power a whole world. She nodded slowly. Or in one. Her voice held both pride and pain, like someone holding a miracle too heavy to bear. Ethan looked around desperately. So what do we do? Soraya knelt on the hangar floor and began to trace glowing runes in the dust. The symbols hovered in the air, forming circles of light around them. This place lies on a nexus, she said, an old power conduit built long before humans walked the stars. If we awaken it, we can open a gate, one that leads far beyond this system. Ethan's brows furrowed. You mean teleport again? She shook her head. No, I mean escape the hunters, the council, and the walls of time itself. Before he could reply, the hangar doors exploded open. Dozens of armored soldiers stormed in, their weapons glowing like suns. Target acquired, one of them shouted. Ethan grabbed a fallen blaster and aimed. Guess we're doing this the hard way. Soraya didn't move, her eyes closed, the pendant hovering above her palms. The air vibrated with a deep hum as the key began to spin. Light rippled outward in waves, bending metal, warping space. The soldiers opened fire, but the bolts slowed in midair, trapped in invisible fields. Ethan ducked behind a wrecked ship, watching as Soraya rose slowly off the ground. The glow around her turned blinding, her voice echoing with ancient resonance. By the law of creation, she whispered, let the path between stars remember me. The air split open like glass, revealing a shimmering tunnel of light. Ethan gasped. Is that a gateway? She said, but unstable. He ran toward her, shielding his face from the wind. Then let's go. But she shook her head. It requires a stabilizer. He blinked. What now? A living anchor, she said. Someone to hold it open while the other passes through. He froze, realization hitting him like a shock. You mean one of us stays? Her silence was answer enough. Ethan's jaw tightened. Forget it, we both go. She gave him a sad smile. You forget, human, I have lived more lives than your species has breathed. He stepped closer, and I don't care. The hangar shook violently as more troops poured in. Soraya's eyes softened. You are brave, Ethan Cole, but this burden is mine. Ethan clenched his fists. You keep saying that, but every time you fall, I'm there to catch you. Her voice wavered. And every time you stand, you remind me why I once believed in your kind. The soldiers opened fire again, and Ethan sprinted through the chaos. He dove beside her, grabbing her wrist. If anyone's staying, it's me, he said firmly. She stared at him in disbelief. You can't control the key, it will tear you apart. He grinned weakly. I'm human, remember? We do stupid things for people who matter. Tears glimmered in her silver eyes. You foolish creature, she whispered. The light from the key flared brighter, wrapping around them both. The hunters shouted orders, their weapons firing endlessly into the light. But none of the shots reached them. The energy field pulsed, expanding like a heartbeat. Soraya placed her hand on his chest, over his heart. If you stay, she said softly, your soul will burn with the power of 1,000 stars. Ethan's voice trembled, then light the way. A single tear slid down her cheek as she whispered something ancient, a word that sounded like hope itself. The light around them changed color, turning golden. The key's hum deepened into a tone that shook the entire hangar. The soldiers screamed as their armor melted into light. The walls bent outward as the gate consumed the air. Ethan felt everything, time, space, gravity, pulling at his bones. Go, he shouted, get out of here. But instead of moving, Soraya leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. Her voice trembled. If I go alone, the universe will forget what humanity is capable of. He opened his eyes in shock. Wait, Soraya, no. But it was too late. She pushed the key into his hands, her body dissolving into silver light, merging with the energy of the gate itself. The pendant pulsed once, then thrice, then burst into 1,000 fragments that surrounded him like fireflies. The next moment, the hangar disappeared. Ethan was falling through light, endless, blinding, infinite. He saw flashes, Soraya's face, the stars, the ruins of empires, and the words she had whispered still echoing in his mind. When he finally landed, it was on solid ground beneath a twilight sky. The air was cold, the stars unfamiliar. He looked at his hands. The crystal was gone, but a glowing mark now burned on his wrist. It pulsed like a heartbeat, echoing Soraya's light. He sank to his knees, whispering, "What just happened?" From far away, a faint voice reached his mind. Her voice, soft as wind. "Live well, Ethan Cole, the stars remember kindness." And as he looked up at the alien horizon, he realized he was not just lost. He had become part of something far greater than a missed flight. The world beyond the gate. Wind whispered through silver grass that shimmered under a twin-sun sky. Ethan Cole opened his eyes slowly, his lungs burning with cold air. He lay on soft soil that glowed faintly blue, each blade of grass humming like music. For a long moment he didn't move, afraid the world around him might vanish if he blinked. The light was different here, warmer, alive, as if every ray carried thought. He pushed himself up, dizzy and disoriented. The ground stretched endlessly into valleys of crystal trees and floating rocks that drifted gently in the air. Far above, two moons crossed paths like watchful eyes. He exhaled shakily. "Where am I?" His voice echoed strangely, carrying further than sound should travel. When he looked down, his wrist still glowed with the same mark Soraya had burned into his skin. It pulsed with a steady rhythm, golden light threading through his veins. Every beat felt alive, as if her energy now flowed through him. He touched the mark, and a faint voice echoed inside his head. Soraya's voice, soft, calm, eternal. "Do not fear the new dawn, Ethan Cole. It remembers your courage." He froze, whispering, "Soraya." But the voice faded into the wind, leaving only silence. He looked around again and saw movement, shapes in the distance. At first, he thought they were reflections, but then they grew clearer. Tall, graceful beings made of translucent light approached, their bodies half solid, half energy. They moved without sound, their faces glowing with shifting patterns instead of features. When they spoke, their voices blended like chords of a song. "Welcome, traveler of the broken path," they said. Ethan took a step back. "Who are you?" "We are the Echo Wardens," they replied, "guardians of what remains when worlds forget themselves." He blinked, trying to understand. "So, not the welcoming committee I expected." They tilted their heads, curious at his humor. "You carry the light of the Keeper," they said. "The key answers to you now." Ethan frowned. No, you've got it wrong. It belonged to Soraya. She is one with the light," they replied gently. "Her essence flows through your soul. Human, you are her echo." The words hit him like a shock. He stumbled back, shaking his head. "I didn't ask for this. I just wanted to help her." The warden's voices softened. "And by helping her, you have bound yourself to her legacy." He dropped to his knees, overwhelmed, the memories flashing again. The hangar, the explosion, her final smile. He clenched his fists. "I should have saved her." The warden's light dimmed. "Perhaps you did." Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath them. From the horizon, a dark wave began to rise, a shimmering shadow stretching across the valley. The wardens turned toward it, their forms flickering in alarm. "The void follows," they whispered, "the corruption sent by the false king." Ethan's eyes widened. "Tereth." The name burned in his mind like a curse. One of the wardens nodded. "He hunts the key. Even through dimensions, his machines have found the rift." Ethan stood, determination replacing fear. "Then we stop him," he said. The wardens looked at him as if measuring his resolve. "You would stand against a conqueror of worlds?" they asked. He nodded firmly. "I didn't come this far to hide." The lead warden extended a hand, and a sphere of light floated toward him. It hovered above his palm, merging with the glowing mark on his wrist. Pain shot through his arm as energy surged. In an instant, a silver-blue gauntlet formed around his hand, pulsing with living light. "The key lives through you," the warden said. "It will answer your intent, not your strength." Ethan flexed his fingers, feeling warmth spreading through his body. "What do I do with it?" "Protect life," they answered simply, as she did. The shadow drew closer, black tendrils sweeping across the land. The air grew cold, heavy with static. Ethan's heart raced. "That's not a storm." "No," the wardens said together. "It is hunger." The sky darkened as the shadow reached the edge of the valley. Shapes moved within it, mechanical creatures with crimson eyes and metallic wings. Tereth's hunters had found the way through. Ethan took a deep breath, the mark on his wrist blazing like fire. The power inside him pulsed stronger, faster. He felt Soraya's voice again, faint but firm. "Stand, Ethan, and let them see what humanity means." He raised his hand toward the sky, and the air around him rippled like water. Energy surged outward, forming a wall of light that met the oncoming shadow. The impact shook the ground, light and darkness colliding with a thunderous roar. The wardens chanted behind him, their voices blending into a single resonant tone. The silver grass bent with the force of the energy, glowing brighter as if lending him strength. Ethan shouted, his voice echoing through the valley. "You took her world, you won't take another." The gauntlet flared, releasing a wave of golden energy that shattered the front line of machines. The shadow screamed and recoiled, smoke rising where the light touched it. When the explosion faded, silence returned. Ethan fell to one knee, gasping, the gauntlet flickering weakly. The wardens approached, their light trembling. "The human burns with the Keeper's flame," they whispered. "He is chosen indeed." Ethan looked up, sweat and tears mixing on his face. "I'm not chosen," he said quietly. "I'm just trying to finish what she started." Far above, the two suns began to merge, their light forming a bridge across the sky. The wardens turned toward it, bowing their heads. "The path opens again," they said softly. "You are being called." Ethan looked up at the golden bridge of light. Somewhere beyond it, he could feel Soraya's presence waiting, faint but real. He took a deep breath, tightening his grip. "Then let's finish this," he whispered. And as the twin suns aligned, the human who missed his flight stepped into destiny once more, his heart carrying the light of an empress and the hope of a galaxy. The light that remains. The bridge of light stretched endlessly across the sky. It shimmered like a golden river between worlds, calling Ethan forward. The wind howled around him, but inside, he felt only calm. Soraya's voice echoed faintly in his heart, guiding every step. "Do not fight to destroy, Ethan Cole. Fight to remind." He walked across the shining path, the stars swirling beneath his feet. Each step carried memories. The spaceport, the old alien woman, her smile before the storm. Now those moments felt like another lifetime, yet every one of them led here. Ahead, a storm of darkness churned like a living shadow. At its heart stood a towering figure clad in black armor lined with crimson light. Tereth, the false king of Vitharion, the brother who betrayed creation itself. Tereth's voice boomed across the void. "So the human stands where gods once fell." Ethan stopped, his hands glowing with the golden mark that burned through his skin. "I'm not a god," he said, "just a man who helped someone once." Tereth laughed, the sound echoing like thunder. "Then you will die as one." The darkness around him moved, tendrils of shadow twisting like serpents. Ethan clenched his fist, the key's power answering his heartbeat. He raised his arm, and light exploded outward. The shadows struck, but his golden aura pushed them back. Every pulse of light sent ripples through the storm, cutting holes into the void. Tereth lifted his blade of pure energy, its edge screaming like torn space. "You wield what you do not understand," he growled. Ethan's gaze hardened. "Maybe, but I understand this. You took her away." He leapt forward, colliding with the dark titan. The clash sent shockwaves across the bridge of light. Stars trembled, whole galaxies flickered, as human strength met divine rage. Each strike felt impossible, a mortal defying eternity. But with every hit, Ethan felt Soraya's presence beside him. Her voice whispered through the energy, "Do not fight to win. Fight to awaken." Her words unlocked something deeper within him. The mark on his wrist spread across his chest, glowing brighter. Golden veins of light wrapped around him, forming wings of pure energy. Tereth roared, his armor cracking. "You cannot carry the key. It was never meant for flesh." Ethan's voice rose above the storm. "Maybe that's why I can, because I care enough to break for it." He thrust his hand forward, the key blazing like a sun reborn. The darkness screamed as light pierced through it. Fragments of Tereth's armor shattered, scattering into nothingness. Yet, instead of hatred, Ethan saw sorrow in the fading Emperor's eyes. "You don't understand," Tereth gasped. "She chose you, because she could not forgive herself." Ethan's light dimmed for a moment, confusion in his heart. "What do you mean?" he whispered. Tereth's fading form trembled. "Soraya created me, and I destroyed her." The darkness broke apart completely, leaving only silence and drifting light. Ethan stood alone in the glowing void, breathing heavily. The key hovered before him, now calm, soft, almost peaceful. He reached out and touched it. Instantly, visions flooded his mind. Soraya's memories, her laughter, her sorrow, her hope. He saw the wars she ended, the world she saved, the mistakes she could never erase. And through it all, he saw humanity's reflection, imperfect, but filled with compassion. He whispered, "You weren't running from them. You were running from guilt." A gentle voice answered, "And you showed me forgiveness." He turned, and there she was, Soraya, glowing like a star reborn, her form made of light and memory. She smiled softly. "You gave what no empire could, mercy." Ethan felt tears in his eyes. "You should be the one here, not me." She shook her head. The universe needed a reminder of who we were, and who we could still become. Her gaze softened as she reached out, touching his cheek. "The key does not belong to gods, Ethan. It belongs to hearts that still choose kindness when it costs them everything." The golden bridge began to fade, light dissolving into stardust. Soraya's hand lingered on his. "Where do I go now?" he asked quietly. "Home," she said. "Not the one you lost, but the one you will build." He wanted to speak, but her voice faded with the light. "You missed your flight once. Now it is time to take the one destiny kept waiting." The stars folded inward, and the void collapsed into dawn. Ethan gasped as his feet touched solid ground again. He stood on a hill overlooking a newborn world. Oceans of crystal blue, mountains made of silver stone. The sky shimmered with two suns rising side by side. Behind him, the wardens appeared, their light gentle and calm. "It is done," they said. "Balance has returned." Ethan looked at his hands. The marks still glowed faintly, but softer now. He smiled through tears, whispering, "Guess I didn't miss it after all." The wind carried Soraya's final words through the air. Every act of kindness bends the stars a little closer to hope. He watched the twin suns rise higher, their light reflecting in his eyes. And somewhere far above, a single beam of silver light crossed the heavens, her farewell and her promise. From that day on, stories spread across the new worlds of a human who once helped a stranger at a spaceport, who gave up everything to save what he barely understood, and who proved that even among endless galaxies, one act of compassion could still change eternity. He was remembered not as a warrior, not as a savior, but as a reminder that humanity's greatest power was never strength or technology. It was the courage to care, even when no one else would. And in every corner of the stars, the legend lived on, of the man who missed his flight and found his destiny among the light.